CTFs.
Thank you, and thanks for NCC Group for putting this on, sponsoring it, convincing me to come here. So who here has ever done a CTF before, of any kind? Awesome, most of you. For those of you that haven't, hopefully after this talk you'll go out and even just do the one out here. They're fun. You'll love them. So my co-presenter's not here. His name's Clayton. He works for SecureWorks with me. He's a senior penetration tester. He's been doing CTF since 2012. He's competed in the DEF CON So Hopelessly Broken CTF, which is IoT-based. It's routers, baby cameras, a light bulb, various things for the last 4 years now, and he's won it twice and came in third once. I'm also a senior penetration tester at SecureWorks. I've been doing CTFs for 10 years now. The last time I gave this talk, I had a picture of myself doing it when I was 17. I took that out because A, it's embarrassing, and B, it was actually at the con I was giving the talk at. But if you really want the picture, I can show it to you. I'm a two-time DEF CON Black Badge winner now. The first time was with Clayton in the IoT CTF and at DEF CON 24. And the second time was actually this year at the DEF CON 25 Wireless CTF. The team was led by Eric Escobar, one of my coworkers, who's actually giving a talk today at 2:30 in track 3 about wireless home security. He knows his wireless stuff. We want another black badge. So CTFs, does this help at all? The microphone? All right, I'll just talk loudly. So capture the flag CTF competitions are, at least the ones I'm talking about, are generally information security competitions that have challenges of various types. Usually someone wins or there's some sort of scorekeeping, and there's oftentimes prizes, which is why you do them, right? There's a few different types. There's either going to be a few challenges you solve, or there might be computers you get to attack or defend against. Some are team-based, some are individual-based. It depends on the competition and how they're running it. And the way you normally know that you solved the challenge is you get some sort of flag or a key or a token to give you an indication that you finished the challenge, here's your flag. So there are basically 3 major types of CTFs. There's Jeopardy, which is what you'll see at most conferences or online. This is going to look like the Jeopardy scoreboard. You'll have 100 points through 500 points for web-based, 100 through 500 for crypto, and so on. These are the easiest to run, the easiest to set up, and the easiest to jump into. You can just go in, find a challenge you think you can solve, knock it out, and get your flag. Another main type is attack defense. This is going to be the type of CTF that the main DEF CON CTF is. So you're going to have your computers or your network, and other teams will have their computers or their network, and your goal is to, in parallel, attack their network while defending yours. Some have various things where you have to keep certain services online. I don't know if they do it here, but in the States there's a CDCC, so it's a college competition where the college students will actually be the blue team and have to defend the services, and they'll hire professionals to be the red team. So the students have to keep the services online, defend against attackers, and have various challenges while they're being attacked by professionals. And the third one is a bit different. This is going to be a mixed or scenario CTF. The most common one I know of is the DerbyCon CTF. So instead of knowing exactly what your challenges are going to be, you're just in an open network and there are flags everywhere. So last year their theme was the United States election. So there's the Republican servers and the Democrat servers. You had to hack into Donald Trump's email at one point and get a flag, things like that. These are a lot less common. They're harder to set up, but they can be really fun if you find one. So if you're still not sure about CTFs, the number of challenges that can be in them are huge. You don't have to be some reverse engineer binary exploitation wizard to participate in them. I've seen challenges that are programming almost entirely. You don't have to know anything about security. So if you're a dev, you could still do these. I've seen some that are just packet analysis. So if you work in a SOC and you still want to help with these, you could be more useful than someone who's been on a red team. Some that have just been games. The same DerbyCon CTF, I played one that was a text-based game based at the conference. So like you were a speaker in a room and you could type leave room when your talk was over and you had to find various clues. So if you at all enjoy games or puzzles, there's probably a challenge for you or something you can at least contribute to a team about. So now I'll show my first demo. just give a basic example of something you might see at a CTF. Excellent. So in maybe a Jeopardy style or another CTF, we might be given an image like this. So just a basic image. This is actually Clayton speaking and myself receiving our black badge 2 years ago. So if you have an image in a CTF, or really any file, the first thing you want to do is just open it normally. Don't start just look at it. I've done CTFs where you open a file and that's the flag. Anybody here can open an image file. If the flag was there, we would have gotten some points. Unfortunately, in this case, since I made it, I know that's not the case. So there's a lot of different ways to go about attacking images, and I'm nowhere near the best person at them. But if you have a file you're not familiar with, even just forensically related, you can run strings against it just to see what's in it. So that'll grab all of the ASCII printable strings from the file we have. So if you can see at the very bottom, we actually got a flag right here. CTFs always check strings. So that wasn't very hard. Anyone who hasn't participated in a CTF, we just got our first flag. It was simple as that. That said, there are a lot of other ways that people will hide things in images. So another thing we can check for is to see if there's more than one file hidden in there. The simplest tool and the one I like the most for this is binwalk. So if we take a quick look at the file, we can actually see that there's appears to be multiple JPEGs in it. So the person making the challenge may have concatenated two JPEGs together or hidden one. Nothing too complicated, but we want to see all of the images just to make sure. So let's see if I can get the command right, because I have trouble with this one. I think this is right. Oh, man. This is why live demos are even more fun. That is DD. So what I'm telling binwalk to do is to extract any file types that are JPEG from this combined file. Because if you remember from earlier, the only interesting files to me here look to be JPEGs. That TIFF file is probably a thumbnail or something I don't really care about. The copyright string, I know what it is. So for now, I just want to get every JPEG file that exists in this combined.jpg file. And hopefully it works. So it did. So it creates a directory called the name of the file .extracted. So if we go in there, we can see that there's actually 3 files which correlate with those 3 JPEGs we saw listed in the file. So let's take a look at them one by one just to see what they are. So if we open the 0, this is the first one I showed you. This is just the regular picture. So nothing interesting there for us. If we open this 45D one, this is just the JPEG thumbnail. Probably happened with whatever image we created it with. But if we open this middle file, we actually found another flag. So all this was 2 JPEGs concatenated together, and we had a flag. Nothing too complicated. All of the CTF challenges aren't going to be like this, but we just got 2 flags in a matter of minutes, even without me remembering the commands. So don't think that CTFs are going to be too hard. So how do you do CTFs? Just enter them. If you're at a conference, almost always there will be one. If you can't make it to conferences, there's a website called CTF Time that is going to list a ton of upcoming online CTFs. You can just pick a random one, log in, do it for a weekend, and see what happens. In person is a lot easier, though. At DEF CON, I had a 17-year-old kid just sit at my table during the open CTF and ask if he could join. I said, of course, yeah, we're always welcome. Turns out this kid was an absolute wizard at reverse engineering and binary analysis. We ended up getting 7th in open CTF, mostly because of his work. It was incredible. There's also a subreddit called Open to All CTF Team. And if you mistype it, they actually have a few Reddits that are like, nope, you're at the wrong one. This is going to be a huge team that allows anyone to join. They have an IRC, a Reddit, and they participate in everything on CTF Time and most in-person cons. If you want to just join a team and you don't know anyone, this is a great place to look. You can also just read write-ups of older challenges. This will let you get a feel for sort of how they're arranged, tricks you can use to solve them, as well as maybe cons in your area or CTFs in your area that you can participate in. But other than that, just Google. You can, if you just type CTFs in Manchester, things like that, you'll find something you can participate in if you want to. So for those of you who have participated in CTFs, this part will be a little more interesting. I'm going to cover some more advanced tactics, ideas that'll help you sort of go from participating in CTFs to maybe winning them. So the one that's not on this slide that's the most important I want to touch on is take care of yourself. At a shorter con like this, or it's less important, but if you're at a 4-day con like DEF CON and you're sitting in a CTF room for 10 hours a day, don't do that. Take showers, take breaks, eat. It makes a huge difference when you're not sitting there strung out on 12 hours of staring at the same challenge, the same screen. You're going to think better. You're going to feel better. You'll miss stuff if you don't. It's not worth it. Outside of that, actual tools, the first one I want to talk about is Slack. For those of you familiar with it, you probably use it for work or chatting with your friends. It's very similar to IRC or a chat room, but it's great for CTFs. You can have one for each conference or each room, and it allows you to collaborate so much easier. If you don't know cryptography, you can go into your Slack channel, throw a message, say, hey guys, I got this far in this challenge. Can anyone pick it up from here? It just makes communicating, instead of sitting at a table or waiting for someone else to come by, a lot easier. The next tool I'll talk about is Trello, and I'll actually talk about it a bit more on the next slide. But Trello is a very simplified workflow management tool. So if you haven't used, if you use something like Jira, Bugzilla, really anything that allows you to track something from start to finish with statuses, this is a very similar tool. Another useful tactic is going to be specialization. This is going to be for your harder CTFs, your bigger CTFs, or ones you definitely want to win. Having a reverse engineer guy or having an image guy or having a programmer will help a ton. Knowing everything is super useful, but if you get so far and you just know you're stuck, having a person you can reach out to, even if they're not on your team. I've talked to people, I've been at DEF CON and reached out to people I knew in North Carolina who were great at crypto and say, hey, we're at DEF CON, we're doing the CTF, we're here, what do we do next? Just knowing people that specialize in things like that will help a ton. And the last one is going to be these, not cheating, but the sort of extra things you can do. Ask organizers for hints. People who make CTFs do it because they enjoy it, but they also want people to have fun and learn. No one creates a CTF hoping that every team gets 0 points. They don't want that. It makes them look bad. They don't have fun. Don't be afraid to ask for hints. We run in North Carolina. We love it when people come up. An organizer is less likely to help you if you come up and say, what's the flag for challenge 4? But if you go up to an organizer and you say, hey, I'm working on this challenge. I did this, this, and this. This worked, this didn't. I feel like I'm close. Do you have a hint for what I can do next? A lot of times they'll help you. They'll at least point you in the right direction. They'll say, hey, have you thought about doing X or Y instead? What happens if you do this? At one point during the end of a CTF, I actually had an organizer. They shut off the CTF. He logged me into his laptop and helped me finish the last part of a command to get a flag because he knew I was real close, but they had to shut down the network. Some other ones, depending on the CTF, are also allowed. If it's allowed, you can ARP spoof. You can sniff the network. There are CTFs that are run on just open networks that allow things like that. Listen to the traffic. If flags are going in plain text, there's no reason for you not to listen to them. If users are logging into systems without HTTPS, listen. Maybe you can get a foothold into the system some way you didn't notice. Bribery also works. Yeah. So during this year's DEF CON Wireless CTF, a member of our team gave the organizers a taste of Belgian beer and ended up with almost as many points as I got from getting it to 2 APs. Organizers love stuff like that. I mean, it's worth a shot. Plus, you have a fun story to tell. So, don't cheat. And this is an important one for CTFs. People are there to have fun. Don't be a dick about it. We ran a CTF at a con not too long ago, and someone actually got into the router and reset all the settings, and we're having to fix stuff just because someone wanted to mess with it. Like, don't do that. People are there to have fun. If you want to do stuff like that, set up a lab, attack the systems you're supposed to be attacking. Follow the scope rules, even if it is a game. That's excellent. Okay. So Trello, I mentioned earlier, is a workflow sort of solution. This is actually a screenshot from DerbyCon last year. This was our CTF board. We ended up getting second at the whole thing, so we did pretty well. But I have 4 columns here. DerbyCon was a bit more particular that we needed the 4th one because, as I mentioned earlier, it was a scenario-based. So instead of knowing that you needed 1 flag for this challenge, you never knew when you were done with something usually. So we had to do. So this was machines no one had touched yet. We got the IP, we got a screenshot, that was it. In progress was something someone was already working on. And Trello is great at this. So if I scan some ports and I find a website, I can throw it in progress, grab some screenshots, throw my basic enumeration in there, but then I can move on and someone else can pick it up instead of them having to start over or ask me, hey man, did you look at this? What did you find? Anyone can go to this board at any time, look at all the machines, say, hey, I think I have an idea here, grab it and continue working on it. It makes life so much easier when keeping notes or when trying to see what you have and haven't done yet, even if it's just stuff you tried that you failed on. It's cleaner than even like having a notepad, which is what I still do a lot. Like I'll have a notepad document like I did this on this challenge. Not as useful. But then for DerbyCon, it was great because we had the 3rd column, which is possibly done. These were machines that like we rooted, we found a flag or 2 on, but something didn't quite feel right. Maybe we didn't go through the whole file system, or we found some files that were a bit janky. And then we had done. So these were machines we were almost 100% certain we got every flag on. We didn't have to worry about it. So why should you do CTFs? For the money and the fame, obviously. The same reason you would do any of it. But in all seriousness, this is a chance for you to, even if you're not a pen tester, you get to do real hacking, real pen testing legally and have fun doing it. You're also going to get experience with these tools, especially if you don't have it. If you join a team doing a CTF and someone's working on a challenge and they're using SQL map in a way you've never seen before, or something like that, you can ask them questions. You can see how they use it. Even if you're not on a team, you're going to be Googling for how do I test for XSS with burp. You're going to be using these tools in a way that if you wanted to do InfoSec or pen testing more so as a hobby or as a job, it'll get you closer to this. You're going to be learning skills. You're going to be improving old ones. It's really surprising how many skills translate back and forth between offensive InfoSec and CTFs. I've learned things in both that help the other a lot. Competition, at least for me, some people aren't always, is always fun. You get to compete against other people. You get to see how you match up. You get to try and win something. It can also be aggravating. At that last year's DerbyCon CTF, before I was with SecureWorks, they had a huge contingent of people there. And one of the players' main strategy seemed to be to annoy the other teams as much as possible. At one point, he sat next to me and sang in my ear for 10 minutes while playing a synthesizer. So not always pros, but it's still fun. And it's a great way to meet new people. I mean, we met the 17-year-old kid. I saw him again this year at DEF CON. I've met some new coworkers. It's also a great way to find employers or current coworkers. I met the SecureWorks team at the DerbyCon CTF. It wasn't a recruiting thing for them. It wasn't me looking for a job, but I shared some bourbon and some flags with some people and ended up going to work for them not even a year later. And CTFs are also great practice because, at least in the States, a lot of companies use them as part of the interview process. So once you get past your phone screenings and your technical, they'll actually give you a CTF that's going to be just like anything you'll see at a con and ask you to solve it. So having the practice always helps. So some of the more popular upcoming CTFs I recommend you check out. The DEF CON one is huge. Unfortunately, you have to qualify for that one, but it's still really fun to read about or go watch in person. They have qualifiers all year round. If you do have a team and you think you can compete, give it a shot. I've tried twice and haven't qualified yet, but it's something I'd like to do one day. The Open CTF is also at DEF CON. Unfortunately, I don't know a lot about the European CTF, so some of these aren't great. The Open CTF is one that anyone at DEF CON can join, but it's very similar to a lot of CTFs you'll see at a conference with Jeopardy. The Seesaw CTF is actually online, and it's great for beginners. My co-presenter Clayton, this was how he got to start doing CTFs. They're very basic, very introductory friendly challenges that you can solve, you can get points, have some fun. And then 2 upcoming online ones I found were the Echo Party, I believe this is their 2nd year running it, and the HitCon CTF, which is still online, and it's their 3rd year running it. And there's also a CTF right outside, if you haven't seen it. NCC Group's booth has 3 laptops. It's a Jeopardy-style CTF. There were 8 challenges when I was last out there. Give it a shot. If you've never done it before, or even if you have some fun. Ask the organizers. Ask me for hints. Give it a try. So here's some resources. I'm going to release these slides. Don't worry about taking pictures, but if you do, the second link is actually my site. It's going to have a lot more resources than even this slide. I basically had a giant bookmark folder I used for CTFs with 100 some odd links, and I ended up throwing it all on one post on my blog with a description of every link. So if you want a picture or you want to write anything down now, that link will have everything on this slide and more. Hopefully something you find useful on it. If you have any more resources, feel free to send them to me. I'll add it to you. You can have credit. I wanted to replace my bookmark folder and all of the things I do during CTFs that I forget every time and throw that there. So these are going to be tools I use that I always forget to install, things like that. But other than that, if you don't want to go there, ctftime.org, as I mentioned earlier, is great for finding CTFs. It's not as good for challenge write-ups, but if you go to old CTFs, they will have some links for each challenge. So what I like doing, at least, is if I do a CTF and I don't solve some challenges, or I think some are cool and I don't really know how they worked, I'll find some write-ups, usually a month or 2 later, about how other people solved it, and either learn from it or just get to see, wow, that was cool. No wonder I couldn't do that. The CTF tools GitHub I mentioned has a huge list of tools, and it's separated by category, which is great. So if you go to the GitHub page, it'll have, image steganography tools, and it'll have a list of them. It'll have cryptography tools and a list of them. It's a great place to go if you're working on a CTF and you think, man, there should be a tool for this, or what do I do next? There might be a tool for it. There are a ton of practice CTFs online that are always open. Pico CTF, I think they're starting to close down their older ones, but they still have a new one every year that runs throughout the year continuously. They used to have all of their old ones open all the time. I don't remember if they still do. Pwn Adventure is one I want to mention because it's a really fun one that I'd like to play with more. It's an actual MMO RPG game you play. The earlier ones weren't MMOs, but they have 3 now. It's a game you play that you can't beat the game without hacking. I think the first or the second one, you actually start a regular RPG character. You have like a wooden stick, and you're attacked by 100 wolves, and you die. You have to find ways to actually exploit the game to continue on. And then just CTF write-ups. Unfortunately, I don't have the link on the slide, but there's a GitHub it's sorted by year for all of the major or most of the online CTFs. It'll just have a ton of write-ups. You can go search through it for a con you were at, or just click random ones. If you don't know what you want to read, you can find random write-ups. And these write-ups have actually helped for my job. I found ways to go through a PCAP file faster because someone did it at a CTF. They needed to solve a challenge in a specific way. So using tshark instead to quickly grab the DNS field. So I used it in a CTF to get DNS exfiltration data out of a PCAP. I then later used it at work to find very similar techniques, and vice versa. So people who are working in a SOC and great at PCAP analysis, super helpful to a lot of CTF teams. I know a lot of the teams I've been on, especially me, when I am doing a CTF challenge and I get a PCAP file, I open it in Wireshark and scroll up and down a lot and hope I see something interesting. Not the most efficient way of working or doing CTFs. So, time for another demo. So, this demo will be a web-based one, obviously. And when you're doing a CTF, well, first, when you're doing any web assessment, be it for a CTF, be it for pen testing, be it because you're trying to break into a Russian website and release your e-zine to your friends. The first thing you want to do is actually take a look at the website. See what it does. Don't just get a URL and throw burp at it. Don't just throw Nikto at it. See what the application does first. Get a feel for it. You'll narrow down your attack scope by a ton. Unfortunately here, all we have is a login page. I could look further, but I wrote this. I know we're not going to find anything else. This is the application. So when you're given a web application, more so in CTFs, but additionally in real life, you should still check the source code even if it does nothing else. You'll at least see what the application is doing, what it's expecting, and you never know. I've found creds in JavaScript comments in the real world. It doesn't hurt to check it. It's quick. So first we'll take a quick look at the source. I'll make it a bit bigger. So for those of you not familiar with HTML or CSS, I'll try and explain it, but this is a fairly simple website. So we have a very basic login form. It's sending a post to login.php. That's not going to help us much yet. There's a username field and a password field. Presumably we're going to have to do something to do with the login. It submits the form. But we also have a flag. So we got our third flag in the CTF already. CTF, comments for flags. You'll find things, especially in CTFs, you're going to find things in comments on pages you don't expect to. Always check them. I've found creds, I've found flags, I found weird programming debug output that you needed to get from the comments. Always check these when you're doing a CTF, at least if you're stuck. So unfortunately, the comments didn't give us much more about this application. So when you have a login page during a CTF, there are three main ways that you're gonna get in. The first one is going to be you found creds on another box or another challenge, or they gave them to you. So either in the challenge description, it told you the basic login and you have to escalate, or you cracked a database on another challenge and you got usernames and passwords and you could reuse them. Unfortunately for this one, this isn't the case. The other two main methods that you're going to find in CTFs are going to be weak credentials, which you're going to find in the real world a lot, or SQL injection. So weak credentials, always try, especially if you're doing CTFs. It might work at a CTF here. So we'll try some weak credentials. So the most common one you're going to try anywhere on any application is admin. If you know nothing about it, or if it's Tomcat, try this. Unfortunately, that doesn't work here. So we'll try another one. We could try admin password. Still didn't work. For the most part, you're not going to have to brute force a CTF challenge. Sometimes you can, and I've had challenges where we solved that we really didn't deserve just because we threw something at it and eventually brute forced the answer. Generally speaking, you're not going to have to do that. There's some way to get in that isn't brute forcing a 12-character random password. Okay. So in this case, I could try a bit more, but I know that it's not going to work. The third most common thing you're going to see is SQL injection. So for those of you not familiar with it, when you log into an application like this, and I could make a better demo, but I didn't. Generally, if I showed the query at the bottom, it would make explaining this easier, but I'll try and explain it for people who aren't familiar with SQL. In the simplest form, SQL is a way to talk to a database. So when you log into your bank website or your Facebook website, for those of you who understand, deal with it, it's going to be a bad analogy. Basically, your computer's telling Facebook, hey, I want a user where the username is Ray and the password is password with a 0. Please don't log into my Facebook. If he exists in the database. And your browser's going to send that off to Facebook, and Facebook will run this query and say, hey, I've got one user on Facebook whose username is Ray and his password with a 0. Yeah, he can log in. Which is great. It makes things easier. Programmers don't have to worry about crazy stuff for logging you in, and you just have to type in a username and password without knowing programming. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, bad people can put bad things in the query. So normally, and I'm going to use the username field here because I didn't plan the demo out great with the first time I made it. So the query I explained earlier might look something like this. So it might look something like this, depending on the system, the application, whatnot. So in this case, it's just selecting all of the users from the users table where their username is Ray and the password is password. Great. But in some cases, maybe we want to change this. We're attacking it. This is a CTF challenge. We know what we want to do. So what if we were to change this password field to something, and I'll show it down here, like a single quote? That's a weird password, but maybe that's our password. If the program wasn't written correctly, it would change our initial query to something like this. So even if you aren't familiar with programming or SQL, you don't really use 3 quotes around something. If you're quoting someone's name, if you're quoting a book, you have a quote on each end. So what happens is, this then looks for users where the username is Ray and the password is a blank string, and then there's some weird quote at the end that's just probably going to break stuff. So let's try that and see what happens. And if you're testing an application, be it for a CTF or something else, throw a single quote in a field just to see what happens. Don't start with these long convoluted queries. If you put a single quote in a field, just see how the application reacts. So that's a lot different than the login field we got earlier. So we put one single quote, which turned into those 3 single quotes instead of 2, and the application broke. This gives us a very likely hint that there's SQL injection, whatever application we're testing. What does that mean? So SQL injection, instead of that original query we had, we're going to try and put our own code into that so it executes what we want it to do. In this case, we don't really want code. We just want to log in. So we have the original query from earlier that starts out as a blank string. So instead of putting a single quote there, putting password with a 0, if we put something like, I'll separate these out, so this is what it would look like. So if we put a single quote, a space, and 1 equals 1, and then the symbols at the end are for commenting. It's basically telling the application to ignore everything else that was after this. We don't care anymore. So in this case, this is what the final query would look like. So if you read it out, even if you don't understand SQL, you're selecting everything from the users where the username is Ray, so the same username we tried to log in before, and the password is nothing. Well, that's not my password, we know, so I'm not going to log in. Or if 1 is equal to 1. And outside of really weird math or physics, 1 is going to equal 1. So in this case, the second half of the query is going to return true. What that means is we're going to be able to log in as the Ray user without knowing his password at all. You won't see it this simplified in the real world that much, but you will in CTFs and you will sometimes in a real application. So let's give that a try. So we still want to log in as the admin user. We're pretty sure that's probably a real user. It's a CTF or a web application, and we want to be admin. If that's not a real username, we'll have to look more later, but. So let's try the same string from earlier. So these two will make that query we showed earlier. And we're in. We logged in. Right now we're logged into this application as the admin user without knowing his password at all. And we got our 4th flag from a CTF in 38 minutes. We have 4 flags. And none of these were particularly difficult. That one was the hardest one. And you don't have to know how it works to find flags. If you literally just do that single quote space or 1 equals 1 during CTFs, you're going to get flags. It's better if you understand it and go a bit further, but you can still get flags with that. So, any questions or answers? I can also try and demo other stuff, but it's pretty quick talk.
What other CTF frameworks would you recommend? So there's a few better ones out there in the CTFD, which is the main ones.
Yeah, I like CTFD. The Facebook one is really cool, and they open sourced it. It's a bit more difficult to set up, but it's a great framework. If you're just running a CTF, I would probably use something like CTFD or the Facebook one. But if you want to build your own framework, it's also really fun. The one we run, we built it ourselves. It's very simple. It's just a scoreboard application that accepts flags, and we have the machines we know of. So it's literally just a list of challenges and some flags. I haven't used a ton other than that, though. I do like the Facebook one, though. I know that, I'm trying to remember what IoT was using. I like theirs as well. I'll have to look that up. But yeah.
several competitions? Because usually it's only for one.
Yeah, I've never found a good resource for that. The best resources I've found is asking people you know or asking Twitter. Say, hey, I'm running a CTF 4 months from now. Submit challenges. I'll give you credit. You can have points. That's the best thing we've found for doing it. I've never found a good place to download challenges for a lot of frameworks. A few... What was that? Yeah. So yeah, that's the easiest way to do it. Yeah. So make them yourselves and modify them a bit between CTFs, or just ask people you know. There are a few resources, and I'd have to find them again, that have like, this is the Facebook CTF and a bunch of demo challenges. But beyond that, there isn't really a great place to just like spin up your own CTF from other people's challenges. Anyone else?
No more questions?
Right.
Well, thanks a lot, Ryan.
Yes, thank you.